Hi, this is Jim Humphrey with Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Let's have a look at the Ross M10 Mark III bolt action group. To pull the bolt action out of this Ross M10, I'm going to move the bolt stop to the intermediate position. I'm going to disengage the safety, making sure it's in the ready position, and just pull the bolt right off the back of the rifle. You may have heard it snap. This bolt actually moves inside the bolt sleeve. So this whole group is called the bolt action group. This bolt action group is off the Ross M10 Mark III with 1 star, made in about 1916. It has some unusual features, and I'll show those to you as I go through this disassembly video. First, let's talk about the parts. There's the bolt itself, the firing pin, the mainspring, the extractor, the bolt sleeve, the cocking piece pin, the firing pin retainer washer, and the firing pin retainer. Then you have the safety catch pin and spring, and the safety catch. These all comprise the bolt action group. You may have noticed when I remove the bolt, this is a straight pull bolt action rifle, because you don't lift on the handle of the bolt to rotate it out, because the bolt itself rotates within the sleeve. See, these lugs are currently in the locking position, but when the bolt is pulled back, it extends the bolt inside the sleeve, and the lugs rotate to the unlocked position. It's imperative that the lugs are in this orientation when I put it back together, or it could be potentially unsafe to operate. First part I'm going to remove is the extractor. Manual says to extend the bolt to remove the extractor, but I found it a lot easier to remove the extractor with the bolt retracted. Just pry up and slide it out. One of the things that makes this bolt action different from other Rosses is that the cocking piece is not threaded onto the firing pin. It's retained by a cocking piece pin. To get to the pin, I'm going to pull back on the firing pin. I've got a piece of 1/4 inch dowel that's about 1 3/8 inches long that I'll wedge in here to hold the cocking piece in place. You'll see it exposes the cocking piece pin. I should be able to just wiggle that out if it's clean. I give it a couple twists and pull on it a little bit. It falls out. If it's not, I've got to give it a bit of a punch and knock it out. And then I just drop out that wooden dowel and release the spring tension carefully. And I can now just slide the cocking piece off the end of the firing pin. Once I've done that, now all I have to do is unscrew the bolt, and it comes out of the sleeve. The firing pin is retained by this firing pin retainer, and it's got a couple lugs on it. So I fashioned a special tool out of some piece of plastic that has got engagement lugs on it, so I can spin that retainer out of there. I've also seen people use a pair of a crescent wrench or a pair of pliers. Actually, what I found works pretty good is a 3/8 inch deep socket. Actually engages those lugs quite nicely and allows me to unscrew it while controlling that spring. Now you hear this snapping sound as I'm screwing that retainer out. But if the retainer ever starts moving smoothly, I can just turn it by hand. It's because the spring is bound up inside. So I'm going to give it a bit of a rap on the side of the table to make sure that spring gets extended, and so I'm controlling the tension when I remove that retainer. Otherwise, the spring could just snap out whenever it wants. So now when I unscrew it, I'll have control of that spring. Now this spring's, compared to other Rosses I've seen, is pretty short. Not too difficult to manage and control. With the retainer removed, I can remove the firing pin retainer washer, and then the mainspring and the firing pin. Finally, to remove the safety catch, I just kind of brute force it out of here by giving it a twist and a pull, and it will eventually kind of pop free at the right angle. And inside the channel there is the safety catch pin, which is kind of hard to get to, but if it's clean, it should just pop out in your hand, and you'll see it should come out with a spring attached to it. So the safety catch pin and spring, and the safety catch. Put them back together isn't too difficult. I'm going to set that safety catch pin and spring back in its hole, and then give it a little push with a punch or a alignment guide to get it seated down in the hole. On the end of the safety catch itself, you'll notice the end of it is beveled, so I'll align that bevel up with the pin to get it over the top of the pin. And again, just kind of brute force it back into place. That simple. So now I'll reassemble the bolt with the firing pin and main spring. I'll note on the firing pin there's a little bit of a cutout. I need to know where that is because I'm going to line it up with the cocking piece pin towards the end of this assembly. First, let's have a look at that firing pin retainer. Notice it's got a couple cutouts on the bottom and a couple of the lugs on top for unscrewing it. It's important to note that orientation because the firing pin retainer washer has a couple of lugs on the bottom of it that mate into those grooves in that firing pin retainer. And as the firing pin retainer rotates, it clicks over those lugs. That was the clicking sound you heard when I pulled that piece out. Also on this retainer washer is a little lug on the top that extends outwards, and that has to mate inside this groove inside the bolt so that it doesn't spin when it's put inside the bolt. So I put the washer on with the correct orientation, little cutouts, lugs upwards that fit into the cutouts of the retainer, and then I have to spin it ever so slightly to get it lined up correctly with that lug, that cutout in the bolt, and then I can screw it back in. I'm going to screw that retainer down flush at the end of the bolt and give it a wrap on the table to make sure that spring is fully extended. One of the trickiest things about assembling these Ross rifles is that it's possible to incorrectly install the bolt into the sleeve. This would cause a dangerous operating condition because the bolt would not lock in the battery and could fly out the back of the rifle when fired. There are 3 different ways to put the bolt into the sleeve, and 2 of them are wrong. Start with the bolt orientation, with the finish side up and the gas port down. Invariably I get in a bit of a hurry. When I put it in, I get the wrong position. What I should have done was stop right at the edge of the smooth portion of the bolt, then apply a little bit of right hand pressure as it goes in, and now the lugs are up. This is the correct installation. The lugs are up. So let me show you that again. Pull it out, just flip it in. It goes in wrong. So, gas port's up, lugs are out to the sides. So pull it back to the edge of the smooth, a little bit of counter pressure, and voila, it goes in, lugs up, correct position. There is yet one more way I can screw this up. If I start with the gas port up like this and try to insert it, again I have flat spot up, lugs horizontal. This is another wrong method, and there's no way of fixing it. It seems like it would be hard to get this wrong because when I go to put it back together, there's an intuitive check. The extractor won't fit. The lugs are in the way of getting the extractor back in its groove, and so when it's hard to get something back together, I pretty much assume I must have done something wrong. So one last time, with the gas port facing down, rotate it into the end of the smooth section, stop, a little counter pressure, and it rotates in, lugs up. There you go. Next, I'm going to rotate the firing pin so that cutout in it is facing up, so that it aligns with the cocking piece pin that has to go through this hole on the cocking piece. I'm going to pull back the firing pin. It's under a lot of spring pressure, so I'll use that custom piece of dowel I made to hold it in place until I get that cocking piece pin inserted into the hole and hold the cocking piece in place. The cocking piece pin goes in pretty easy. It shouldn't require any force. I'll twist the firing pin a little bit as I pull on it to get it to drop in easily. And then I just make sure it's not protruding on either side. Now I can remove the dowel and let the cocking piece go forward slowly, managing that spring tension. So I check and double check that bolt is inserted in the sleeve correctly. The extractor fits in this extractor groove, so I slide it down inside the extractor groove until it bumps up against the end of the bolt, and then I just press it out over into the groove and into the bolt. With the bolt extended, the gas hole will be facing up and the lugs horizontal. When the bolt is inside the sleeve, the gas hole will be to the left and the lugs will be up. I want to move the bolt stop into the intermediate position and look along the sides of the bolt action. There are a couple of rail guides, one on the left, one on the right, and those rail guides engage these two rails in the top of the receiver. So with the bolt pulled out to the extended position and locked in place so that the lugs are horizontal, the gas hole is up. Okay, that looks good. There should be a slight gap between the sleeve and the lugs. Yes. And I'll make sure both the rails are engaged in the rail guides. Make sure I push the bolt stop into the lock position and push the bolt home. So I can do a function check. But when I pull the bolt back, I should see a gap between the sleeve and the lugs about 1 inch long. This gap is essential as an indicator of a correct installation. When I push the action forward, the bolt stops in the breech, but the sleeve continues forward, causing the bolt to rotate, which locks the action into battery. When I pull the action back, I should see that gap. Well, that's about all there is to it.
Well, I hope you found that interesting. I'm Jim Humphrey from Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Remember, enjoy your firearms, join the NRA, and be safe out there. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.